Johnny's always running around. Johnny's always running around, trying to find certainty.
Hello everybody and welcome to this eTech R show. We're broadcasting live from the Renault stand at the Munich Motor Show. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. So once again we're here at the stand which is dedicated to what we call eTech, and that's Renault's innovative and exclusive hybrid powertrain technology. Well, I'm delighted today to have three very prestigious guests with me. First of all, Dr. Luc Julia, who is Scientific Director of Renault Group, and he was telling me earlier, he's one of the grandfathers of Siri. Am I right in saying that? So welcome to you, Luc. We have also Professor Carlo Ratti, who is Director of MIT Sensible City Lab. Have I said that correctly, Carlo? And we also have Armin Promersberger, who is Senior Vice President Product Management at Harman Automotive. Okay, I've got that right. So good morning to all three of you. I know two of you have got come from a long way away, so thank you very much for that. You probably came from Germany, did you?
Well, I came from Munich, right?
Okay, so hey, you didn't have so far to go. Now, just to fill everyone in, we're here on this magnificent stand. We have 7 vehicles which really kind of sum up the completeness of Renault's electric range today. We are here, and you all know this, but we're here to talk about mobility particularly. The mobility of today, but also the mobility of tomorrow. The title is Mobility: Time for a New On- and Off-Board Experience. That is a question we'll try to provide answers to. You know, maybe some of them will be contradictory. We can say what we like, no holes barred. So let's just start with a very quick question. Just tell me, in a few words, succinctly, what the word experience, because we talk about mobility experience, right? What does experience mean to you, or mobility experience? Perhaps starting, who wants to go first?
Happy to. So I would say, if you look at this in a slightly more philosophical way, I would say, experience is like life. It's about interacting with something outside. And what is interesting today is that that's changing both inside the car, but also outside with the city, which is becoming described more and more with data. It means that, we can have different type of interactions. Again, us in the car and us in the city. With the car is an interface between both of them.
Do you have an example of one good or bad mobility experience that you've had?
Well, if you look at that, then in a more precise way, yes. But I'll keep it a bit more general. It's about really the experience for me is really the interface between us in the city, us in the car, and the car is a mediator.
Okay, we're going to go back to that, Carlo, in more detail. Armin.
Oh, experience, right. It's a big term, right? Everyone talks about user experience these days.
Yes.
For me, experience really means the impression that a product or a service leaves on me when I use it. To go a little bit more in the philosophical way. And it's really thinking, and I'm using this kind of explanation quite often. It's like, you have 2 restaurants, right? And the one restaurant is serving a perfect dish. It's like gnocchi pomodoro, the best you ever had.
Yes.
But the place is a little bit run down, the patron is not so nice, and there are no parking spaces. But you go there because of the food.
The food's great.
The food is great.
Yeah.
And then there's the other restaurant, and it's like, it's one notch down, it's still good food, but you have a parking spot, you feel welcome, everyone is very nice, the place is nice. This experience, the whole thing, will make you go there more often than to the other place. So that's what I call experience, right?
Yes.
It's like, I want to experience that part as a whole more than just the food.
And that could be even more important, or at least as important as the product.
Absolutely. It's like the product is more than one thing.
Yes.
Right?
Do you have an example yourself of a good or bad experience, whether mobility or not?
I was just driving down to Italy. So yes, I have a good and a bad example, right? I was driving down, brand new car, wonderful drive, nice scenery, Italy, good espresso at every gas station. for like 600 kilometers, great experience. I feel safe. I feel I enjoy the ride. And I was using the ADAS features. And then like once every 100 kilometers, my lane departure warning didn't do what it should. And that's a really bad experience because that's the moment where you say, okay, can I trust this car? A good experience in mobility for me is I want to go from place A to place B, and I want to enjoy it and I want to be safe.
Do you think that exists today?
We're getting there, right?
I'm going to bring in Luke here. I don't know if you have another definition of a mobility experience or experience generally, or any reaction to what we just heard.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's very, very interesting to feel that your experience in the car is going to follow your experience as a human being, you know, everywhere you are, anywhere you are. So it doesn't matter if you are in your car or if you are in your home, if you are, you know, anywhere else. I mean, you need to have the right environment for you.
Yes.
This is for me what is the experience, right? The right experience is when you feel comfortable wherever you are and you can do whatever you have to do, work, entertaining or whatever, wherever it is. So the car should be a continuity, you know, of your life. Because at the end of the day, this is about yourself. This is about you. This is about, you know, the life you want to live.
Absolutely. Now we're going to look at all of these points in more detail. What we're going to do is we're going to start by looking inside the vehicle. So we're talking about the onboard experience here. And we can see it today. Cars are more and more equipped. Some may say over-equipped, because often it's difficult to know just how many things the car can do, right? You know, there's so many of them. So it's like a bit of like a computer on wheels in some ways. You've got the sounds. Obviously, you've got the apps. You've got this kind of connected services. Obviously phones, maybe TV and sort of 3D cockpits. I mean, you know, so the question really is the car today or maybe in the near future becoming the kind of mobile, multifunctional device like a mobile phone, Luke?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. It should, right? I mean, as I just said before, I mean, you should be able to do whatever you are supposed to do at the time you want to do it, right? So it should give you the experience, should give you the tools to perform, you know, whatever the task is. So, I mean, sound is obviously very important because, I mean, you need, if you have, you know, a call or if you have a, I mean, right now we all know that we have, you know, those calls all the time that are remote, right? So if you're in the car, you need to have a very good sound experience in order to be able to be understood and to understand correctly what people are saying, right? Same thing if you are being entertained. I mean, you want not only to have the right sound, but you are also to, if you are stopped somewhere, let's say, you know, you want to have the right screen to do that. And for the people that are around you that are not driving, you know, you want also to be sure that the experience is going to be nice and that they are going to have also the right devices for them, you know, to be connected to the world and to be doing what they have to do. So connectivity is very important. Sound is very important. Display is very important. Yeah. And of course, you know, display can be also something that is going to be used for safety for the driver and entertaining the people around.
Thank you very much. Obviously, you mentioned sound, so I'm going to bring you in, Armin, because that is your business, it's your speciality. What role, because we're actually looking around both here and just around the show in general, there is a lot actually on sound. Mm-hmm. So what role does sound play in a car today and in the future?
Well, let's start with the role that Luc mentioned, right? It's, first of all, for me, there are three things. It's like emotion, right? Because sound is very, very emotional. And then there's a safety aspect, and then there's a comfort aspect. So if you start with the emotion, it's like in the Megane, right?
Yeah.
The Harman Kardon system. You can induce emotion. We are emotional beings, right? And we enjoy emotion most of the times. And sound, like music, content, is creating emotion. The sound system is actually the middleman between the artist and your emotions.
Yes.
Right? But the sound system can do more because then there are phone calls coming in. Some of them you like, some of them you don't like. Both induces emotions. Some of them are positive, some of them negative. Yeah. But you need to be well understood. So sound goes up as an uplink, which is microphones and processing. And then there's the system itself. So that for me, the emotional part is, that's why we started sound in cars. Because the drives were long, we wanted to have music.
Yes.
But then you go into the comfort aspect. It's like the cars, like an e-native car is already a quite quiet experience.
Yes.
But with this quiet experience, there are suddenly you hear problems, acoustical problems, much more elevated than you heard before.
Like the tap dripping syndrome.
Yeah, or the road noise, for example, or the bumpers when they start working. And the sound system, a well-designed sound systems with the right processing can help you feel more comfortable, take away or mask the sounds that are really disturbing.
Yeah.
Right? And the most exciting part for me these days, from a technical perspective, is then when you go into safety. Because right now we talk about music and phone calls and comfort, but the whole world talks about ADAS, right?
Yeah.
And autonomous driving. And on the one side, these are features that make decisions about our lives, but we don't really know what the car is doing. And the sound system, well designed, if you have control about the three-dimensional space around you, you can put warning sounds where they should be. If there's a pedestrian on the right side, you could put the warning sound over there.
On the right side.
Yeah. And the important thing is your brain is wired in a way that sound information, acoustic information, is much faster processed than complex visual information.
Yes.
Right? So there's a lot to sound that we can do these days.
There's a lot to be done.
Yeah.
Where we are today is another question, perhaps, that we can...
But we are already quite far. So it's more like how much do we want to put into the car?
Yes.
There are systems like we're starting now in this collaboration with a sound system that is really on the emotional side. To get to other levels that we just discussed, you need to put in more hardware, over-provisioning hardware to really drive software and features.
Yeah,
Right.
that's something that we'll be moving towards. There's also the question of customization, I suppose, you know?
Yeah, and also how the car reacts to you.
Yeah.
Right? It's like to your preferences. Like Carlo might like much more bass than I do, which most probably is not true. I most probably might like much more bass than you do. And why do I have to tell the car, right? Why isn't it figuring out by the music that I'm listening to, by the volumes that I'm listening to, how it adjusts to my preferences?
Yeah.
And maybe if I can add on that, you know, I think if you think about the interaction, as you say, the interaction, the car can respond, but the important thing is to have sensors describe, you know, understanding the user, understanding the city. And from this point of view, I think some of the interactions we can build and we can bring to the car can be much more sophisticated than the one we got in our pockets with our smartphones. And the reason is that the car collects much more information, both about the user, you know, it knows how you're driving, if you got your hands on the steering wheel, it knows how many people are in the car. All of those are sensors that you got inside the car. And then the car more and more knows about the city. Especially we'll talk in a moment about self-driving cars. It means that the car has a lot of camera, has LiDAR information, has a lot of sensors describing the outside. And so by this better knowledge of both the people inside the car and what's happening outside, the car potentially could become a much more sophisticated interactive platform than, say, a smartphone.
Okay, so you think it'll be more sophisticated?
It can, because actually the data streams you have, and you know, even Luc is agreeing.
I mean, you say that, but today, is it fair to say that the mobile phone is more?
No, I think the mobile phone is something where we are more used to it.
Right.
And yes, it has a lot of information, historic information about us. But when you think about this real-time response, when you got a more interesting sensing device like the car, you can potentially get to more sophisticated interaction.
Okay, do you agree with that, Luc?
Yeah, let me rebound a little bit on two things there. So the first one is about the emotion and something, and the fact that the electric car, by definition, you know, doesn't make a lot of sound, right? So I think that there is a signature that we can also invent, you know, for the car itself. If you want to, if you're in the mood of being a little bit, you know, vroom vroom kind of guy, right? So when you want to put a little bit of things, so maybe the car should have a signature sound that is going to do that. So this is something that we need to think about, and it's true for the inside of the cockpit, but also outside, you know, to just be in the environment, to, you know, see that you have a car coming, right? So this is something that is very interesting also in terms of sound. Another thing that I want to talk about is the fact that sound is actually something that is very well processed by human beings, right? So it means that if you have an issue in the car for some reason, you know, of course, a message that is going to be a spoken message, right, is going to be much easier to process than a message that is going to be displayed on your screen, right? So this is something that we need to think about also, that sound, I mean speech, basically, is also something that is going to be very interesting for the interaction in the car, both in and out. Means that now, maybe I can talk to the car and the car can answer, somehow like that. So it becomes an environment that you are going to be, that is going to be much more natural. And hopefully, this is going to be more and more something that we are going to see in those cars.
Fascinating, yeah. Obviously, when you've got a lot of sounds around you, you're going to have to be able to focus on them if somebody's talking to you, and that's another issue. Now, we've already started talking about mobility as becoming a kind of high-tech business. I mean, obviously, we're in the age of data, we're in the age of edge computing, cloud, artificial intelligence, machine learning. So how will all of these technologies, because there's a hell of a lot of hype around these, how are they going to impact the mobility of tomorrow? It's obviously a vast question. And Luc, you've started with Renault in May, and so you've obviously been brought in to think about these things. So
yeah, of course. So I mean,
what did they ask you, and what did you tell them that you could do in relation to this?
So hopefully, I can bring a lot of experience in terms of AI, artificial intelligence. I mean, AI is everywhere today. I mean, the reality is that for the past, let's say, 10 years, everybody is talking about AI, but not a lot of people, are actually implementing AI. Because, I mean, AI has this kind of, vision that is not really the reality. So we need to focus on something that is going to be really useful for the people who are going to drive cars, and that is going to be useful for the security first, and then, we are going to see how we can use this AI. But I mean, AI is basically AIs. I mean, there are many ways to introduce, this technology, this kind of technology inside the car. And we are going to see that with not only the mobility, the fact that the car becomes a multimodal, piece of a multimodal interaction between you and your environment, but also is going to be inside the car according to where you are, what you are doing, and the sensors that you are talking about. So AI is going to help the fusion, to help to fusion all those things in order to provide the right level of interaction with you and the car.
I understand. Thank you, Luc. Carlo, I'd like to bring you in here, because when you talk about data and mobility, you talk about something called the moving web. Can you tell us what that means?
Yeah, totally. And just going back also to what you were saying, I would say that a couple of things. The first one is that AI can change our experience in the car, our experience outside of the car, and that's where we get to the moving web.
Yep.
And the other thing I want to mention, however, is that there's no AI without data. You need data in order then to train whatever AI system you're talking about. And so again, it goes back to the fact that the car is kind of a bunch of sensors on wheels, as you were saying, has a lot of potential to create new, more intelligent systems because it knows more about the city and about yourself. Now, going back to what you said about, the moving web. Something interesting happened in the space of air travel a few decades ago. A few decades ago, if you wanted to book a ticket, you had to call different airlines, Air France, Alitalia, British, and so on, and just ask a quote from all of them. And then a common platform started, different common platforms actually, such as Amadeus, and then this is what allowed later to have all of the system we use every day, whatever, the Kayak, the Expedia, that allow you to look at all the mobility options you have. Now, this hasn't yet fully happened at another level of mobility in our cities. And the reason is that in our cities, yes, you can look at what the potential is, but you don't have one ticket to do the whole thing. You don't have an integrated payment system in order to say, how do I go from A to B? And that integration, I think, is going to be one of the biggest changes. And let me just give one very simple example. I was recently in Paris. And in Paris, it's interesting. Today it seems it's very difficult to move by car, especially it was decided a few weeks ago, I believe, that cars should be limited to 30 kilometers an hour in the whole city.
Yep.
But actually the best way to move in Paris is that you use multimodal things. I would take the subway, le métro, and then jump on a scooter for the last mile and combine a scooter or an Uber, you decide. So that type of combination is what the moving web might allow tomorrow, to be able with one single token if you think about tokens or one single ticket, to actually go from A to B with the best possible combination using real-time data. It's kind of multimodality on the spot.
But today, that's not a reality.
It's getting there. I think there's still some pieces missing. Some of the big incumbents are not very happy about moving there too fast, the Uber and so on. But I think it's getting there, and I'm pretty sure that's where we're headed.
Okay, well, we're looking forward to that. I'm going to bring you in, Armin, because how will AI and machine learning and data, etc., improve the mobility experience in your view, particularly to do with sound?
AI is another big word, right?
It's a buzzword, yeah.
I think what I would call it is we are going into this era of context. Because we got products, we got devices, and we as human beings, we understand context, right? Where we are right now, whom we are with, what is talked about, why is it talked about, what the context is. The sound systems, for example, they are missing context today. As the whole car is, like we're trying to give the car context to the outside world with autonomous driving, ADAS levels, the sensors. So what if my car would understand when I'm sitting inside the car, for example, where my head is, because we are continuously moving. We're looking to the left, to the right, someone is sitting more to the front, and you have those micro movements all the time. If we want to have control about sound, we need to get more accurate about understanding the human being. Its state, for example, cognitive load, its physical state, and then we can process the information better.
Yes.
And more precise.
So you're saying when you cognitive
load. Yeah.
So in other words, the car or the sound, I mean, you should know more about what the person is feeling and what their expectations are so that you can actually kind of anticipate them, whether it be sound or, is that what you mean?
Yeah, absolutely. If, for example, the car should warn me with sound, it's like, when you are driving, there are interesting features today like driver monitoring systems, but they are kind of simplistic, almost stupid. They just look at something very specific, like eye movement. But, for example, you go into your car, you had a bad meeting. You are looking straight at the street, right? It's like the car thinks you are really focused on the street, but your brain, your head is going like, oh, this was a really bad meeting. I really didn't like that, right?
Yeah.
It's like the cognitive load is very different to what your physics are showing. So the car should really understand. What if the car could understand my cognitive load? It could warn me, Armin, you need to focus on the street. Don't think about the meeting yesterday.
We're not probably quite there yet with the cognitive load, but you know, maybe we'll get there one day. Luke, now when we talk about data, you know, AR, AI, and machine learning, of course, we instantly think about robotization, automation, and inevitably, because my goodness, we've talked about it a lot, at least recently, we talk about autonomous vehicles, right? So I was told when I was a kid that we would have a flying car by 2000. Okay, we're 2021. There is a flying taxi, kind of, coming. But I mean, we have to admit, basically, the cars, you know, on the road, they're much more in the road than in the air. So my question is, this may be a simple question, the answer is probably more complicated. Will a vehicle without a driver, the famous autonomous car, ever be a reality?
So, I mean, today, when we talk about autonomous cars, we talk about 5 levels, right? 5 being the ultimate autonomy, where you are going to have exactly what you described. This is the night driver, right? Something that is going to be, you know, autonomous all the time, and you can play cards in the car, and you know, it's going to drive you from A to B, and you have zero intervention from anybody, and it's magical.
That's level 5.
That's level 5. This level 5, for me, will never happen.
Never?
Never. I mean, never like in never. Right? But that said, I mean, there is level 4 before that. Level 4 is very, very similar to that, in a sense that it's going to be mostly autonomous. Right. So it's going to allow you to play cards if you want to, you know, but sometimes an event is going to happen that is going to require human intervention. And human intervention can happen inside the cockpit, so you can have a wheel, or outside the cockpit through a remote control kind of thing, right? Yeah. So that would be very, very impressive, and that will happen. And that's not tomorrow, but you know, that's going to happen. Right now, if you look, you know, at the people that are claiming that they are doing autonomous cars, they are at level 2.5.
2.5.
This is the reality.
Yeah.
If we consider the full scope of autonomy, so any kind of situation that you can handle. So we are around 2.5. We'll reach 3 in the next few years, and 4, a little bit later. But it will be already incredible in terms of safety. It's already not bad today in terms of safety.
Yeah.
I mean, those AI systems that are in the cars today, I mean, they are allowing to prevent a lot of accidents.
Yes.
And more this is going to happen because those AI systems, they are much better than yourself in a lot of situations.
Right.
But can I disagree?
Yes, you can, Carlo. Please
yeah, I
do.
think it makes it a bit more exciting as a conversation. So, no, I think, for some things, we are already at level 5. We're doing a project in Amsterdam, we're looking at self-driving boats, and they're already at level 5. And the reason is that they're not going very fast, and the environment is not too complex. So somehow, being level 5 or not depends on the complexity of the environment, how fast you're going. Now, today, if you are also on a highway, you're probably level 5. But if you want to be in the center of Naples with traffic jams and everybody moving around, and move at like 1,000 miles an hour, well, whatever, or 50 miles an hour, then, that's something where we're certainly not a level 5. But guess what? Even humans wouldn't be a level 5. Even humans, get confused at times. So somehow I think, we shouldn't look at level 5 like an absolute. But it depends really on complexity, on the environment, how fast we go, which are the same parameters that make driving difficult for us if we are in a complex environment and go very fast.
Okay.
I mean, if I may, the good news is that we actually don't disagree. I mean, in the sense that this is true. I mean, but the difference between a vehicle and a human, is that the vehicle will not find a solution that it didn't learn before. A human is going to be able to adapt to a situation that he never saw before, and is going to be able to get out of it. So this is,
Luke, can you just give us? You told me earlier about an example of where a car, a machine, and artificial intelligence will get it wrong.
Yeah,
or has got it wrong.
This is a classic example, that was actually shown on a video that is taken by a Waymo car. Waymo is this company from Google that is doing autonomous driving for 10 years now, and they are the most experienced. They are maybe at 2.7 right now, so a little bit, the most advanced actually. And so they released in 2018, they released a bunch of videos, 10 million miles of videos that they took, over the past 5 years. So anyway, so I went there, and I looked at those videos, and I found one that I called the gem. And what is the gem? I mean, you see a guy driving, you see a car driving in the roads of Mountain View in the Silicon Valley, and so there is nothing happening, right? Mountain View is boring as hell, right? But anyway, so you see the thing driving, and in the middle of nowhere it stops. And then, starts again, stops, starts again, stops, 3-4 times like that, with no reason, with no apparent reason. And then you watch the video a little bit closely, and you look at on the side, there is 2 guys walking on the sidewalk, right? And the 2 guys walking on the sidewalk, one of them, on his shoulder, he has a stop sign. So, of course, the car, so he sees the stop sign, and the stop sign, and the stop sign. If you see a guy on the side of the road with a stop sign on his shoulder, you are not going to stop. I mean, hopefully. Otherwise, we need to talk, right? So, this is the kind of thing that you adapt to this kind of situation. The machine cannot.
Yeah, the machine, if it's not trained, maybe if I'll share a small, and I think we were involved in the Singapore self-driving big deployment that turned Singapore into one of the main test beds for self-driving. And there was a similar thing where actually kids saw the self-driving cars arriving, and some of them decided to start, dancing in front of the car, and the artificial intelligence wasn't trained, or throwing balls and playing, and the system goes totally berserk because it wasn't trained. It was so funny that actually the Singaporean government said we should perhaps have regulation to avoid the harassment of self-driving cars, and we convinced them actually that's not the way to go. The way to go is to train AI to make sure that AI is able to recognize the stop sign you're talking about, the ball, somebody dancing, and so on. So but AI learns so fast, you teach one car and millions of cars learn. So I'm not too concerned about that.
Okay. But I would disagree.
Please do. Please do. Come on.
So theoretically, the cars learn from each other, but legislation and the way how you bring cars into the market, because it's a safety function, do not allow that every day you update your driving algorithm. So there needs to be quite a lot of stuff done on the regulation side that you can provide these learnings every night from millions of cars back into the cars that are on the road. So you
Okay.
get the learning, but you don't get it into the cars yet.
What do you think about, just the autonomous, the idea of autonomous cars in general and where we're going? I think you're quite opinionated on this, aren't you?
Yeah, I am. I hope they are around when I'm about 80, because then most probably I have to turn in my driving license, and I would like to go places, right? To me, a highly autonomous car is more or less a robot, right? It's robotics. It's a robot I can step into, right? It's a very different thing than the machines that we have on the street today.
Yeah.
I agree with both gentlemen, I guess. I'm a strong believer that by now it becomes more a technical problem, so we can see solutions. Once you can see a solution, you can work your way there. It's not going to be as fast, most probably, as everyone thought. And the regulation, like the cities, the infrastructure, it's not only the car. The environment, it's that context, right?
Yeah.
The infrastructure needs to react
Yeah.
and provide a safe space for the car.
Yeah, and we're going to get to that in a minute. Maybe, Luke, for you, do you think we're surrounded by electric vehicles here, obviously. Do you think the autonomous car will be electric? Will it run on hydrogen or solar panels, or will it be sailing, or is that not actually that important? I mean,
I think it doesn't matter that much, we should find a way that is going to be the best, for the environment. This is what we should be sure about. So electric, obviously, seems to be pretty good right now. Hydrogen can be also certainly something that we can think about. We need to be sure that the source, the way hydrogen is being created, is going to be, good. But anyway, so I don't think that it matters that much. What matters, is to provide the people who are going to drive those vehicles or to be in those vehicles a way that they are going to be happy about, sure that they can reach point B, right? So it means that electric vehicles, they have a range, right? And like gas vehicles have range also, but with the current network of gas stations, it's pretty simple. So we need to be sure that we have the same kind of network that is going to allow those cars that are going to be smart enough to find the right way to drive you to B, but being sure that they are going to stop at the right points in order to recharge themselves.
I understand. Now, obviously, a lot to say on the autonomous vehicle. We could go on, but now we're going to look, because you mentioned it, Carlo, and so did you. What's happening outside of the car? So it's about context. So we're looking at the city of tomorrow. What lots of people have called the smart city. Carlo, you don't quite say the same thing. You talk people at the heart of what you call a sensible city. So first of all, tell us, what do you mean by sensible? Why isn't it just a smart city, right?
Yeah, so I don't like too much the word smart city. To me, smart city sounds a bit too much like a computer in open air, to use your metaphor. But I think, sensible city, a city that's sensible but also able to sense, seems to put more emphasis on the human side of things. But whatever you want to call it, smart city or sensible city, I think what's happening behind is similar. What's happening behind is that we got much more data from the physical environment. We can use different type of sensors, also sensors in the car, on the car, in order to scan the city. And this digital information can help us, again, to better understand where we are in the context we navigate. So somehow, that's a key trend behind, which is the same that's happening inside the car, is also happening outside with the city itself.
Okay. Armin, what do you think, what's going to be the position of sound, because that is your speciality, in tomorrow's mobility, particularly, at the heart of this sensible city?
Well, there's a lot of interaction, human interaction between pedestrians, drivers, for example, that you need to kind of replace. Right? For example, you go, you come to a crossing, you wave someone over the street. A car today cannot do this. It's like that sounds that a car is approaching, like Luke mentioned. These are all things, these interactions need to be replaced with something.
Yeah.
And sound, again, because it's processed so fast by this little tiny supercomputer between our ears, this is the way how, it's the most sensible way to communicate out between the individual participants.
Yes.
Yeah,
Thank
this
you.
is the way. Sorry, this is the way the car, blends into the environment, right? I mean, it needs to have its own personality, and so we expect today, as humans, right? We expect this car to do vroom vroom, right? So if it doesn't do it because it's a silent car, I mean, you need to adapt that. So we need to have this signature. That is going to be the sound signature of the car that you are going to be able to process thanks to our 3D sound, abilities that we have. That is going to help us to know that there is a car coming, just behind us, and to be warned about that, right? So we need to. Sound is very, very important for that because we process that all the time. It's part of our own, little computer that you have that is allowing us to, live in this environment that we are on.
Luke, just going back to what Carlo was saying, what do you think mobility is going to look like in the smart or the sensible city?
I think, like Carlo was saying, right? I mean, this is very much something that is going to be multimodal. So it means that at the end of the day, you want to go from A to B, but if there is a river between A to B, you are going to have to take a boat of some sort if there is no bridge, right? So it's going to be a combination of the best ways that are going to allow you to do this trip, right? So, I mean, feet, of course, you can imagine that you can do something on foot, and scooters, cars, trains, whatever is available should be there, available for you. With this, the payment system that Carlo was talking about is something that is very important. So you need to have something that is going to be easy for you. You don't have to find the right card for the right thing. So the future of mobility is really the multimodal, easy thing.
And maybe just to add to that, I totally agree. I think somehow think about multimodal in the 20th century. Multimodal in the 20th century was based on big hubs, where actually fixed hubs and so on. Today, thanks to real-time data, it's really multimodality anywhere. You go from one mode of transportation to another one, that exactly in 30 seconds or 200 seconds, the bus will come, your micromobility solution will be there. So data is actually allowing the whole city to become a giant multimodal hub. Well, in the 20th century, you had a few hubs in the city, the station, where different modes would converge. Now it's everywhere, thanks to data.
I'm going to be a little bit controversial here because living in Paris, as you said, basically the car is being ejected, let's say. It is not really wanted very often. So, with this ecological future, and obviously we've got to respect all the emissions and stuff like that, when you talk about a sensible city, does that make sense in today's world? And are cars going to play a part in cities? And if so, do you have sensible countryside? And how do you see it? Or do cars become, rather than owning a car, it's more of a service?
Yeah, look, I think in order to look at this, we need to look at two things. First of all, how are we going to power our mobility system? And there's no doubt, as Luke was saying before, we need to move into something that's sustainable, so where actually the sources of energy are from renewable. Then it doesn't matter if the vector is hydrogen, if we use batteries, we might use biofuel. It doesn't matter, but at least, we are decarbonizing.
Yes.
That's number one. The second thing is actually the use of the infrastructure. And to be honest, when, you can argue about what's happening in Paris, but certainly, usually in a car, you've got one or two people. And if you are in the city, you need to do half a mile or 1 mile, on average, most trips are less than 1 mile, then, does it really make sense to move 1 or 2 tons of steel and find parking at the beginning or the end? I think for small transportation in the city, we might find a broader range of solutions, smaller solutions, micromobility solutions that can help us. So somehow I think what we are going to see, certainly mobility will be core in the sensible city, but we might find more biodiversity. Smaller solutions when you're just in the city center, micromobility today, tomorrow, other form factors, and actually other solutions when you have longer displacements.
Yeah. So you talk about sensible cities. I'm saying, can you also extend that to, because obviously more and more people coming from further away to get to cities. So can that sensible city be extended? Right?
Totally. If you want to call it sensible region or sensible countryside, but somehow it's the same principle at different regional scales.
Yes. Fantastic. Does anyone want to respond to this?
No, I want to comment on the car in the city, right? So I still believe that there is a space for the car in the city. Somehow, especially if it's CO2 free, right? So I think that the private environment sometimes is something that you want that you cannot have in a metro, for instance, something. I mean, if you want to have a meeting during, with two people from A to B inside the city, a car is still something that is interesting. I mean, bike and scooters are good, but when it's raining, it's a little bit less good. So I think that there is still space for the car in the city, especially if it's shared.
Yes.
And I think this is what mobility is about in the city, is that those cars are going to be more and more shared.
Yes, okay.
I think the sensible countryside thing is interesting, right? If you consider that in some areas still, you can't even type in your navigation destination because there's no reception, right? It's a massive infrastructure topic, right? You need roadside units, you need multi-access edge compute, so the web can move with you while you're going. That's on a state level, like for a country. That's a real investment, and
Yes.
actually it requires dedication.
That requires a political will as
Yeah.
well to put that into place. We haven't totally run out of time, but I'd like to really now kind of project forward because, let's dream a bit. Let's project to 2,100. Somebody told me that's not in long. That's
Yeah,
not. No,
200.
2,200. Okay.
We say no, 2,100 with a bit of help from medicine, we might still be around, so we don't want to make predictions. But 2,200, we are safe. So
Okay. I mean, okay. Armin, what do you think? Where are we going to be? What do you think it will be like to drive 2,100 or 200, if you like, of course?
Well, if you go 100 or 200 years out, if you go 100 years back, right, it's like, where were we then? It's like you had an annual production of, if at all, like 1 million cars a year. If this continues, there will be no space that we drive around. We're going to need a flying car, right? So I think the transportation will be a little bit more like Carl is explaining, multimodal. And the question is, do we own cars by then? I would expect or hope that the car is, because I still like to go from A to B, safe, secure, and enjoy it. So that the car is more an interactive device, a sentient device. It understands me better, right? So that would be really nice.
Yes.
And if it could pick me up when I'm in my wheelchair, then
Then you'll be a happy man.
Then I'm a happy man.
Okay. Carlo, as you can hear, we're live because there's sound around us, which is, we haven't got to the stage where we can actually remove it completely. What's your point of view on this looking forward? What's your conviction?
well, I would say something similar. I think we're going to, the key change is going to be we're going to get the solution we need when we need it. So in the 20th century, we only had one solution. We owned it. It has to be oversized to plan for peaks when the whole family is together, 4 or 5 people. And that's how we got to the 5-seater. I think we'll see many more solutions for mobility and they're all integrated to data. So that's how I would see it. But I would say, I don't think we'll see any drones or flying cars in cities soon. I think, that's one of these kind of old dreams, but will stay a dream. And the reason is that technology can change plenty of things, but technology cannot change physics. And physics means that in order to lift our weight in midair, in the weight of a vehicle, you need a lot of energy, you generate a lot of noise, and sometimes something will fall on somebody's head. And because of that, we'll never be able to fill our cities with thousands of flying machines, but I think we'll be able to fill our cities with with a biodiversity of mobility solutions that will be tied together thanks to data.
Thank you, Carlo. Luke,
Yeah, same. I mean, what I see is the easiness. So, you don't have to think about it. You just you think about the fact that you want to go to B. You just, get out to your home and, whatever is available for you to go there, you just ride go in it, ride and whatever it is. And then, if you have to change the mean of transportation, you just, get out of this one and go in this one. Easy. Everything is easy. You don't have to think about it. Everything is prepaid or paid on the fly, whatever. This is just for you, something that you don't have to think, you don't have to plan. It's planned for you.
I understand. Well, just to kind of bring in, Renault, we're surrounded by these lovely electric vehicles. I mean, I don't know if you have, your job is to kind of think of ways to, how do you see Have you got anything to say about, the cars and what we can look forward to, basically?
I mean, first of all, we are going to see a new experience in the car, like we are seeing at the very beginning, right? So hopefully we are going to see something much better in terms of, interface, in terms of the way the people in the car, not only the driver, but the other people are going to enjoy the ride. I mean, we are going to see a lot of AR in the car at one point, AR, augmented reality, right? I mean, we have something that is like your living room, but your living room that is actually moving in the world, right? And so through the windows, you are going to be able to experience this world, in another way. And that's going to be fantastic, So this is something to look forward inside the car. Outside the car, we talked about all the sensors and all those things that are there. I mean, they are going to allow you to be more and more, safe in the car, but also for the people around you. And we are going to see a drop of accident, and it's going to be much better for everybody.
So very exciting times, with all of what we've just been saying, whether it be sound, AI, sensible cities, and we're going to see some. We may not get to, I think it's very important to say, we may not reach, the fully automated vehicle, but we're going to get somewhere that's going to be incredibly...
Yeah, as Carlos said, I mean, it doesn't matter. I mean, the bottom line is that we will reach a point that is going to allow us to feel like if it were autonomous.
Even if that means taking somebody from outside at some point.
Yeah.
That's something that we talk for another day because we have now run out of time. It's been an absolutely fascinating exchange. Thank you so much for coming, all three of you. It's been a great pleasure, and I hope everyone here has enjoyed it with us today. So the IAA obviously continues. Stay tuned. And those of you who are actually here, obviously, we are waiting for you. Please come and meet us and look at the cars. So it's been a great pleasure for me to be with you today. Thank you very much for joining us, and goodbye.
Thank you.
Johnny